Hey everyone, welcome back for another video. My name is Tanya for those of you that are new here, and I'm a watercolor artist. So in today's video, I wanted to paint a yummy Valentine cupcake for you. So I hope you enjoy it.
Okay, so to get started, I've got my Arches watercolor paper. I have two different paintbrushes here, I believe a size 3 and an 8. I have a pencil with an eraser, and then I have my Winsor Newton watercolors. I pulled out 4 colors here. This one here is Winsor Red, Burnt Umber. Actually, this one here is a Daniel Smith. It is an Opera Pink and an Ivory. So I'm just using those 4 colors. If I pull in any other colors, I will let you know what I'm using as I'm going along. All right, so to start our little cupcake here, we're just going to start out with a little bit of perspective. So we're going to have an oval down at the end because this is going to be the bottom of the cupcake. So just make a really narrow oval. And then you're going to bring up the sides. And actually, you can make this oval even bigger if you want. Make it as big as you want. It doesn't really matter. You are going to flare out the sides a little bit, so don't make it too big. And then bring up the sides a little bit angled, like that. And then you're going to do another oval on top and connect those lines. Now, you could have done the 2 ovals first and then connected the lines. It doesn't really matter. I've been doing this so long that I just kind of go up with the lines and then I do another oval. But it might be easier for you to do both ovals and then connect the lines going down. All right, and now for the frosting part, this is a little fun. We're going to be starting with a little bit of like a curl up here, and then just bring it down almost in waves, like that. And then you can bring it down like it's kind of dripping off the side of the cupcake here as well. And then do the same thing on the other side. And if you think that you have a little bit too much on one side and not enough on the other, you can always bring that out. Just erase the lines that you don't want. So I'm going to go ahead and erase those ovals that I had made. Especially the one on the top here, I'm going to erase the whole thing. And the one on the bottom, I'm just erasing the inside part. I'm going to leave the outside part of the oval. Okay. If you feel like you need to lighten up your lines, go ahead and light them up right now. I am not going to lighten them up just because I want you to be able to see this on camera. Brush off your eraser shavings. And then go ahead, we're going to start with the bottom of the cupcake first. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of get my paper here wet. Not too saturated, but wet enough that my paint will flow nicely across the page. You don't want a puddle because then most of that paint, that pigment is going to stay where that puddle is. So if you feel like you have too much water on one side, just take a clean brush and wipe it off and dab it on your paper towel. That's all I'm doing is I'm dabbing it off on my paper towel over here. All right, so I'm going to take my burnt umber. I'm going to get it wet. Now, if you want to go ahead and put this on your palette and mix it around, you totally can. I'm just going straight from my little, my paint here, straight to my paper. Look how beautifully that's blending in already. I'm going to do the other side. And I'm going to do under the frosting. Now, the reason I'm starting with the edges first is because I want those to be darkest. They are furthest away from you with this little cylinder here. The sides are the furthest away from you. This part here is the closest to you. I want this to be lighter than the sides. And then, of course, under the frosting here, it's going to be a little bit darker because it's kind of creating a shadow. The frosting is creating a shadow onto your cupcake. So I want to get that nice and dark. We will go in and put other layers. So don't worry about it if it's not looking too dark right now. And if you want to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a damp brush, not wet, not too wet, but just damp, and I'm going to slowly bring my brown, my burnt umber together in the middle. Again, I want it to be lighter than the sides. All right. I'm going to do the same thing to the frosting up here, but really quick, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to dry this really quick because I don't want my frosting to bleed into the cupcake. Okay, so our cupcake is nice and dry. One thing that I did forget to show you is we're going to turn this into a Valentine cupcake since Valentine's Day is next month. So we're just going to put a heart. You can make your heart as big as you want. I'm going to kind of just have it bleed over the side of the cupcake here so it's off the edge of the cupcake and part of it is in the cupcake. Go ahead and erase any lines you don't want and lighten it up at this point if you want to lighten up your heart. I'm going to take my size 8 brush and I'm going to put some water on where the frosting is going to be. Now again, you don't want a puddle anywhere. So just try and get the water as evenly across that space as much as you can. If you do have too much water in a little certain section, then just take it off with your paintbrush and dab it off on your paper towel. All right, go around your heart because at this point you don't want to fill in the heart. All right, I'm going to take my Daniel Smith Opera Pink and I'm just going to be putting it on the edge again. If you don't want to use the Opera Pink and this is too vibrant for you, don't use it. Use whatever color you want. You can make your cupcake any color. I'm just going to follow along with the edge here of my cupcake. And I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom here. And then the other side. And then I'm slowly going to go around this little heart. So here again, I'm going over the edges of my cupcake and I'm leaving the middle a little bit lighter. I want it to look like this is lighter and it's closer to you, just like we did with the bottom part. All right, if you want to get it saturated a little bit more with that pink or whatever color you're using, just go ahead and pick up a little bit more. Dab it on. Go under your heart because your heart is creating a little bit of a shadow onto the frosting, okay? There. Go ahead and fix up any edges you want that you think need to be cleaned up a little bit. All right, I am going to go ahead and dry this part and then we're gonna start adding other layers. Okay, so our cupcake is nice and dry. I'm gonna start going ahead and adding a little bit more of my burnt umber down on the bottom because I just wanna get that deeper. I am now going over a dry page here. It's not wet on wet like it was the first layer. This is now a wet on dry, which means I did not wet my paper first. I want to create some little lines, some texture in my cupcake here, like you just pulled the paper off the cupcake, the liner, and it's got these little edges around the cake part. So that's why I'm creating little lines here. If you don't want to do that part, you don't have to. You could just make it nice and solid. But of course, leave the middle lighter. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and deepen that up even a little more. So it's going to be a chocolate cake. So if you want to make yours more of a yellow cake, just use a different color. Deepen up those edges again. If you feel like your middle here is too light, go ahead and add just a layer of brown right to the middle again. At this point, if you want to add a little bit of Payne's Gray or black to even just deepen up your shadows even more, you could totally do that. But I just want to make it look like my edges here are darker than my middle. So let's go ahead and add a little bit of black while it's still wet. And then we'll go ahead and dry this and see if we need another layer. Oh yeah, that's deeper, much better. Add a little under your frosting. Perfect. Perfect. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and dry this and we'll see if we need another layer. Okay, that is really, really pretty. If you've watched my videos before, you know I like to push my darks and my lights a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and put another layer on. If this is good enough for you, leave it alone. But I'm going to go ahead and push my darks even more. So I'm taking my same colors, my burnt umber. I'm going to add a little bit more on this side, a little bit more on this side, a little bit more under the frosting here, a little bit on the bottom of the cupcake, and then I'm going to pull in those lines again that we had made before. So I had lost a little bit of those lines. Blend it in nicely. You can bring some of it down, some of it up. If you feel like there's too much on the bottom, bring some up. If you feel there's too much on the top, bring some down. Just play around with it until you like it. There, that's really, really pretty. I think the only thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to dry this, and then I might bring in some of those lines again just to give it a little bit more dimension here, but we'll see. So I'm going to dry this really quick. Okay, so that is definitely better. I like that a lot better. I am going to go ahead and just bring in a little bit of my black just to push it a little bit more. I'm going to move to my size 3 paintbrush now. Pick up a little bit of my black. And if you feel that you can't go directly from your paint to your paper, you could always dab off a little bit on your palette. I have not used my palette at this point. Everything is going directly from my paint to my paper. I think it's just how comfortable you feel with the amount of pigment on your brush. If you feel you have too much, then just dab it off on your palette. All right, so I picked up just some of that black, and I'm bringing in a little bit of those lines that I had lost. And I'm gonna bring them in more just on the side here. The middle, I'm not gonna bring the lines, just because now my lines are really, really dark, and I don't want too much of a contrast here. I just want the lines a little bit on each side. And if you feel like you need to bring up a little bit, go for it. Blend it in. Really pretty. All right, so we're gonna go back to our frosting here. And I'm gonna pick up my Daniel Smith again. And again, it's not wet on wet, it's on dry paper. It's wet on dry. And I'm just gonna bring a little bit back to this edge here of the opera pink. I'm going to go up to the top here. Now always think about where your light source is coming from. My light source is probably going to be coming from this way. So I'm going to have more of my shadows on my left side. I have just a little bit of water on my brush right now. I'm going to blend that in. So I'm just adding the opera pink to this side over here for right now. Just deepening up my side a little bit. I'm going to blend that over just so I don't have a line there. I'm going to blend it over and feather it out across your frosting here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my opera pink and I'm going to make little lines. You can go ahead and dry this first. I'm just going to go ahead and just do it right now. I want it to look like it's almost like a soft serve ice cream. You know how they go around in a circle? I want it to kind of have that effect. So I'm going to make some lines go around my cupcake. So I'm starting with the part here that's indented, all these little indented marks here, and I'm going to make a line and I'm going to go around my cupcake. Okay. Like I said, you could dry your cupcake first, your frosting first, and then do this. I'm just kind of doing it wet on wet at this point. I just want to give it some little lines. And then I'm just taking some clean water and I'm blending that in a little bit. Just feather it out. All right, so see how you've got that movement right now going on? I'm going to do a little bit more. Look how pretty that looks. All right, so I'm going to take some Payne's Gray. I feel like it needs a little bit more dimension. I'm going to take Payne's Gray, or actually, you know what I could do is I could take blue. It doesn't really matter. Payne's Gray, blue, whatever. Just take a darker color. I think I'm going to just try the blue. And this is my turquoise, Winsor Newton turquoise. And I'm just going to follow along with that line. And it's going to start turning into this bluish purple color because red and blue make purple. Just go ahead. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to my bigger brush right now, and I'm just going to blend it in. I just have water on my brush, just a little bit of water, and I'm blending it in. If you feel you have a little too much blue, just pick it up with your brush, dab it off on your paper towel. Again, you could have used Payne's Gray for this if you wanted to. I chose to use the turquoise. I think it's pretty sometimes when you're shadowing if you just use its complementary color or a color close to that rather than black or Payne's Gray, because it just looks a little bit It's got a little bit more dimension, a little bit more pop to it. It looks a little bit flatter if you use your grays and your blacks. All right, so I'm gonna let that dry, and I feel like it needs a little bit of, a little bit more. I'm adding, what is this, Payne's Gray. I'm gonna add a little bit of Payne's Gray down here, just to shadow up just a few little spots under the frosting. You can bring it down on the edges if you'd like. Follow along with your stroke, your vertical stroke here. Don't start going horizontally because that will look really funny. Just keep going with your vertical strokes. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and dry this, and then we're gonna see if we're gonna need another little layer on this frosting. Okay, so I love the way that dried. See my lights and my darks? I love the contrast of that. If you didn't like that, what you could do is you just go over it with another wash if you want to, of maybe your pink, your opera pink, or whatever color you're using. I'm gonna leave it. I love the look of the lights and the darks. And actually what I'm gonna do is, I have a little too much paint up in this corner here. I'm gonna try and pull off some of my paint with just water and my brush. And you can dab it off on your paper towel, or you could just pick it up with your paper towel. See how that's lightening up that area real quick? I like that. Just gives a little bit more highlight on the top here. It was just a little too dark for me. There. That gave a little bit more. And then actually, you know what? I'm going to do the same thing kind of up the top of the frosting here. Just a little bit more. And you could always add in, if you wanted to, a little bit of your white watercolor. I know in watercolor they say don't use the white. I like to use the white. I think it looks, I don't know, when I want something a little bit lighter and it's not working out for me just pulling up the paint, I do use a little bit of white. Or even just to lighten up a color. I think it's really pretty to use the white once in a while. All right, so I am going to go ahead, and I think I am going to start on my heart now. So I'm going to move over to my size 3 again. I'm going to get my heart nice and saturated here with water. Again, no puddles. Just make sure it's nice and even across that whole section. If you do have too much water on one section, pick it off. Take it off with your brush and put it onto your paper towel. Just dab it off on your paper towel. All right, I'm going to move over and use my Winsor red now because I want a red heart. I'm going to get that nice and wet, and I'm going to go over just the edges of the heart. Now, if your frosting is still wet, it will bleed into it. So if you don't like that look, go ahead and dry your frosting really quick. And I'm just going to let it bleed in naturally. If you feel like you need to pick up a little bit more and add a little more, go for it. It wasn't bleeding as nicely as I wanted it to, so I think I needed to add a little bit more. Now, I like that highlight in the middle. If you don't like that highlight in the middle, just go ahead and mix your color around. If you do like that highlight in the middle, leave it alone. It will dry beautifully. All right, we're gonna go ahead and start putting in a little bit of a table here. So I'm gonna use my Payne's Gray. And I'm just gonna take a little bit of my Payne's Gray, and actually I am dabbing it off on my palette this time because I wanna make more of a wash of it. So I'll take some Payne's Gray, some water, make a wash. And I'm using my size 3 paintbrush still. Now, your little horizon line or tabletop here, it doesn't really matter where you put it. I'm just gonna, if you wanna put it way up high, that's fine. I'm gonna bring mine a little bit lower. I'm just gonna do maybe like 1/4 of the way up of the cupcake. And that's where my table line is gonna be, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and shadow that under the cupcake. And actually at this point, I'm gonna move to my size 8 again. And you're gonna wanna blend that in nicely, just to create a shadow around your cupcake. Go ahead and pull in some more if you need. Okay. And if you wanna just start giving it some shadows here and there, like maybe some little ruffles in the tablecloth, you can. I'm going to keep my shadows mostly on the left side because that's where most of my shadows are on my cupcake, is the left side. Remember I was talking about where your light source is coming from? My light source is obviously coming from the right because all this is darker. So even my shadow is going to be a little bit darker. And under the cupcake for sure. We're going to go ahead and give our tablecloth a little pattern here in a minute. I think I want like a black and white striped tablecloth. So I'm not going to fill this in too much because I want it to look like black and white. These are just shadows. So if you feel you have too much, lift it off with your paintbrush, dab it off on your paper towel. Lift it up, dab it off on your paper towel. Because I want this to look more like a white or very light gray tablecloth. So lift up some of it. If you feel like it's not lifting up enough, take a little bit more clean water on your paintbrush, dab it on your painting, and then just take some of that paint off. Just kind of work it so you can take some of that paint off. If you feel like you need to dab it off with your paper towel, once again, you definitely can do that. It will definitely light up your page a little bit even more if you do that. So see how I just wanted a little bit of a shadow. That's all I wanted, just to show that there is a table there, but it's not really a color. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and deepen up my heart a little bit more with the red as we're waiting for the tablecloth to dry. So I'm gonna go around. I move back to my size 3 paintbrush, and this is Winsor Red, but you could do your heart any color you want. Now my art is a little bit more pop art than classical soft art. I like to push my lights, I like to push my darks, I like things to pop off my page. A little bit more, I don't want to say cartoony, but a little bit more whimsical. That's just the kind of art that I like. If you want to make this a little bit more realistic, you don't have to push your edges too much here. I love to push my edges. I just like to have paintings pop off the page. You do not need to do that if you like things a little bit more subtle. All right, so I pushed my red here. Again, I didn't bring it in the middle because I like that light part right there. I do feel like I need a little bit more of my opera pink under the heart. It's not creating the shadow that I really wanted. My heart is wet now. It's okay if it starts to bleed into each other. I don't mind that. If you do mind that, go ahead and dry the heart before you start this. So I'm just adding a little bit more of my opera pink to the frosting right under the heart, and I'm going to blend that in the same direction as my frosting was. Remember how we made those lines go swooping down? I'm trying to keep that same motion. So I'm just using that kind of sideways angled motion here, just to go with the frosting. Blend it in. And I feel I'm going to take a little bit of my paper towel here. You can always rip off a little piece of paper if you want. I darkened that area again a little too much like I did before. So I'm just going to dab some of that off. Okay. Maybe even up here too. All right, pretty. At this point, what I think I want to do is I'm going to add in a little bit of my ivory. So before I was saying that you don't have to use, the white if you don't want to. In watercolor, the rule is use the white of the paper. I kind of break the rule a little bit. I mean, I go with the rule. I do leave the white of the paper showing, but I break the rule at the end because I do like using my white paint. So I'm going to drop in, as my heart is still wet, I'm going to drop in a little bit of my white paint. It's probably going to turn it more to like a pinky color now that we did that, which is totally fine. That's what I'm going for. I'm going to bring in a little bit of highlight down here too with my white paint. And I'm just going to follow the curve of the cupcake. And I'm going to go over that like that. If you don't like this part, don't do it. You can always lift up some of that paint with your paintbrush with just water like we did before. But I like using the white once in a while. I think it looks really, really pretty. Especially when you're using it wet with another color and they blend together and that's how they dry. I just love that look. All right, so I just wanted to add a little bit of white. And actually, I think I'm going to add a little bit of white even onto my highlight that I had left. But I think I just want to bring that up a little bit more. And maybe I'll put a little highlight up here, just a little bit, because that's supposed to be the shadowed side of our cupcake. So just a little bit. All right, really pretty. Now my heart and my cupcake are bleeding together. I don't know if you can see that, but right here, they're bleeding together. I don't mind that. If you do mind that, just take it off with either your paper towel or a little bit of your just clean paintbrush. I think I'm just going to kind of blend mine in a little bit, almost like it's a reflection onto the cupcake of the red heart. and it's blending in with the white paint that I had just put up here, which is totally fine. All right, pretty. All right, so let's see if our tablecloth is dry. Yeah, it's dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, actually, you could do this a couple different ways. You can take your archival ink pen, which I've got my Micron pens here, or you could do this with a pencil, or you can go directly with a thin brush. I'm going to still use my size 3, and a black or whatever you want. I want it to be a black and white striped tablecloth. You do whatever pattern you like, but I'm going to do a black and white striped tablecloth. If you don't trust yourself with the lines directly from the paint to the page, go ahead and use your archival ink pen, and just kind of outline where you want your lines to be, or even better, use your pencil, because that way you can erase your lines. I am just going to go over and make my lines straight down as much as I can. And how you do that is you look at the edge of the paper. If you have a nice clean edge here on your paper, just go along and just kind of follow the edge of your paper. Just make it parallel to your paper there. Look how nice that looks. So what we did first was we shadowed our tablecloth. Remember that? We had shadowed our tablecloth first. So we don't have to go ahead and do that after the lines. Do that before the lines. And I'm not diluting my black because I want it to be like a nice dark black. So I might actually even go over that one more time after this dries, just because I want a nice dark black. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to push the red again. I want to make sure my cupcake is dry this time. Actually, it's not dry. I'm going to go ahead and dry this part of my cupcake, and then we're going to go over and put a little bit more red on that heart. All right, that is drying really, really pretty. But I do want to just kind of crispen up my heart on this side a little bit. So what I did was I went ahead and dried the frosting really well so that this time the heart and the frosting don't mix together. I'm going to pick up that red again, or whatever color you're choosing, and I'm going to go over the edge and just deepen that up once again, leaving the middle part of my heart nice and light. And I'll start deepening up this side too. And then just with a clean brush, just blend it in, feather it in a little bit. Now, if you want to close up your heart, you can. I don't want to. I like to leave the middle part of my heart there nice and light. I feel like it needs a little bit more of that opera pink right under in this area of the frosting. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up my opera pink. I'm still using my size 3 paintbrush. And I'm going to bring in a little bit more of that opera pink. I feel like it lost its edge here. But not too much, because this is the lighter side of my cupcake. Just a little bit like that. So pretty. All right. I am going to go ahead and put some little splatter marks in on the background. So what we're going to do is, I think I'm going to choose maybe a blue. Maybe that blue that we had used before for the shadowing. So I'm going to take that blue and I'm going to make a wash on my palette here. So get enough water on there. All right. Get enough water and paint on your paintbrush. Take another paintbrush and start tapping it. Go around your cupcake, around your heart, around the tablecloth. I'm going to pick up a little bit more. It's okay if you get it on there right now. As long as it's wet, we can pull that off with a paper towel. That's really pretty. All right, so with a paper towel, before it dries, just kind of bunch up your paper towel in your finger like this and just pick up some of that blue that kind of accidentally went on your cupcake. And most of it should come off, even on your tablecloth there, if you got a little on your tablecloth. There you go. Super, super pretty. I think what I want to do is push a little bit more of the darks in my on my frosting. You don't need to at this point, but I feel like I need to, just because I like to push my lights and my darks a little bit. Okay, so it's still that blue wash that I had made, and I'm just going to put it right under here, just on that one side of the heart. And then dab off your paintbrush and just kind of blend it in a little bit. I'm going to move over to my size 3, pick up some of that water, dab it off on my paper towel. There. Really pretty. I lost that little highlight up here again, so I'm just going to dab some of it off. There. All right, since our heart is nice and dry, I'm going to take my Micron archival ink pen. I will take a size, let's do a size 5. And I'm just going to write love in the middle of the heart. You can write whatever you want, but I'm going to write love. Make sure your heart is nice and dry. So I think we can call this done. If you want to put sprinkles on your cupcake, you can. You can put a cherry on it, whatever you want. But I think I'm just going to leave mine like that.
Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you liked it and learned a little something. And if you did like it, please give me a thumbs up and you can make a comment in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe if you want more videos like this one. And you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Have a great day. Bye.